Hi there. Today I'm going to continue the series on firearms related books. And the one I'm going to discuss today is written by a very, very good friend of mine who I worked with and knew for many, many years. It's this book, The Armed Option, Zen in the Art of Combat Pistol Craft by Warren Buttler. This is actually Warren's second book. He wrote this one first, a basic primer, The Art and Science of Basic Handgun Accuracy, before writing The Armed Option. I first met Warren when he came on our course that we did in Minneapolis in 1988, a hostage rescue course, which had been organized by Marcus. And we had some really good chats during and after the class. And Warren at the time was a federal air marshal, which was a very secretive organization and still is. And he was flying all over the world. And we kept in touch. And he was also at the time writing a column for SWAT magazine on methods of carriage of firearms. That was his specialty, particularly concealed carriage of pistols and compact subguns, that kind of thing. And then I next met him in London after Marcus joined the Air Marshals, and I got a phone call right out the blue. I hadn't heard from either of them for a while, and they were coming to London a couple of days later, and I went down and met them, met the whole team, and we went and had a meal and a good chat. And in fact, that was the first time I heard about things like neuro-linguistic programming. So we kept in touch, and Warren was based in Chicago, the Chicago field office, and I used to always transit Chicago. I used to fly American Airlines to get my air miles, and I always used to fly the same route. And I always used to link up with both Warren and Scotty, one of the other guys that I'd met in London. And we had a brew at the airport, and I was caught up on things. And later on, Warren became an instructor at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, FLETC, and he hosted me down there a couple of times. And I went down there, and he was in the firearms training, and then he later was involved in what they call the surgical speed or the tactical speed training program. And the thing about Warren as an instructor, which I only really realized when I was at FLETC with him, was he was one of the very few firearms instructors who were an auditory. Most firearms instructors are visual, strong visual and kinesthetic processing. Warren and the only other one I know is Masayub are both auditories, and they rely on tone of voice, inflection, and strong spoken lessons rather than anything else. And they're not big on using visuals. In fact, I've done about 8 programs with him, and the only real visual kind of aids he uses is a video of him talking. So very, very strong audio. But both of them are extraordinarily effective at it. So it just goes to show the exception can be really good. The book, as I say, this is his second book, so you can kind of class it as being slightly more advanced. Covers many, many topics. Gives an overview of what combat pistolcraft is, and then technicalities like grip, stance, firing positions, that kind of thing. Goes into flashlight technique, which is very, very important, and support hand shooting and that kind of thing. Equipment, modifications to equipment, quite a bit on the covert carriage, which is his specialty. Breathing and breath control, and things like dealing with failure and mental discipline. So there's a lot of stuff in this book you don't really get in many of the other books. It's a bit of a rarity now. I think it's out of print. You can still pick it up. It's probably rather expensive, but it's certainly a really worthwhile book to have. And Warren himself is a very accomplished guy. While he was at FLETC, he got into the Western action shooting. There was a couple of guys down there who were doing it, and he started actually making his own equipment. And he told me he made a knife, a kind of Bowie knife, and he'd show it to me next time I was there. Anyway, I turned up and fully expecting to be polite about some lump of metal, and he'd made this fantastic knife that if you saw it in a knife show, you'd have been impressed. It was really, really good. And he was also a musician, and when he left FLETC, he became a professional musician. He's made a few records since then. So very interesting guy, very, very experienced. The Air Marshals had a very, very high standard of firearms qualification shooting, the highest in the federal system. So he really knew his stuff, and put a lot of good advice in this book, well worth having.